Many Christian women over 60 who survived childhood sexual abuse carry one painful question for decades. Should I tell my adult children what happened to me? Maybe you stayed silent to protect your family. Maybe shame convinced you to bury it. Or maybe now later in life, you're afraid time is running out. Hello, my name's Annette. I'm a pastor, wife, and a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And here at Awake to Joy, we have honest conversations about healing, safety, and finding lasting peace in Christ later in life. Today, we're going to gently walk through why this decision feels so terrifying and how to know if sharing is emotionally safe and what God says about truth, healing, peace in the years you still have left. Whether you choose to tell or not, you are not weak for struggling with this. For many survivors, this isn't just about telling a story. It's about shame, fear, family loyalty, and protecting peace at all costs. And many women grew up believing, don't talk about family problems. Don't dishonor your parents. Just move on. Even thinking about telling your children can make your nervous system panic. You may fear they'll see you differently. They'll hate you. They'll hate the family member involved. Or they'll think, why didn't mom tell us sooner? But silence made sense for you when you were surviving. That does not make you weak. Your mind, your body were trying to protect you. And one of the biggest mistakes hurting survivors can make is doing things under pressure. Pressure from family, culture, social media, and sometimes even churches. There's no biblical command that says you must immediately tell everyone your story. Your story is your story, and healing is not forced exposure. And wisdom matters, safety matters, readiness matters, and sometimes sharing brings freedom and connection. And other times, sharing too soon can leave you feeling vulnerable and unseen. You are allowed to move slowly, prayerfully, and safely. I remember wrestling with this question for many years, and I did not tell my adult children about my childhood sexual abuse until I was around 50 years of age. By then, they were already having children of their own. And the reason I waited was not because I didn't love them. It was because I loved them deeply. And when they were young, I didn't want to burden them with the pain they could not yet understand. And I felt they didn't have yet the life experiences or emotional maturity to process something so heavy as children. And honestly, I don't want to place fear inside of them. I didn't want them to suddenly look at things or people and the world through fear. And for many years, silence felt like protection. But eventually, I realized something. God kept opening doors for me to work with people who had been sexually abused. I was even being asked to speak publicly on the subject in different places. Because of that, I realized I did not want my children hearing the story from someone else. Carrying painful secrets for decades affects us, not just emotionally, but physically and spiritually too. So I began praying, Lord, if I speak, let it come from wisdom, not fear, guilt, or pressure. And that became the very important to me. This decision is not about forcing yourself to disclose. It's about prayerfully discerning what brings truth, what brings peace and safety into the next season of your life. If these conversations helps you feel less alone, would you please subscribe to Awake to Joy? This channel is a safe place for Christian women over 60 healing from childhood trauma. Every week we walk through the journey together toward peace, safety, and lasting joy in Jesus. Now, many women stayed silent because they wanted to protect their children. That came from love. But over time, silence can create a distance that nobody seems to understand. Your children may sense sadness, fear, anxiety, emotional walls, or deep pain they could never fully explain. And sometimes adult children begin asking questions later in life because they want to understand you more deeply. Not every child is safe to tell. Not every relationship is healthy enough. But sometimes the truth becomes part of breaking generational pain. Sometimes the greatest gift is no longer pretending. Before having this conversation, if you're going to do it, ask yourself, am I sharing from a place of peace or panic? What outcome am I hoping for? Is this person emotionally safe? Do I have support afterwards? Am I prepared if they respond imperfectly? This is important. And sometimes we imagine one conversation will instantly heal a decade of pain. But healing usually happens more gently and more over time than that. Sometimes your children may need time to process what they hear. Sometimes they may feel grief, anger, confusion, or even guilt they did not know sooner. That does not mean you made a mistake by sharing. Families need to process pain differently. One of the hardest things for survivors is learning that we cannot control how others respond to our truth. We can only speak honestly, prayerfully, and wisely. And sometimes the greatest healing comes not from having a perfect conversation, but from finally no longer carrying the burden alone. And that's why emotional support matters so much. Whether support comes from a trusted pastor, counselor, support group, or a safe friend, you should not walk through this in isolation. One thing many survivors hear is, if I tell my children, something will break. Sometimes those conversations are difficult, but sometimes something beautiful happens too. Sometimes walls begin to come down. Sometimes adult children finally understand their mother's pain. And sometimes compassion grows where silence once lived. Sometimes survivors experience something they never thought possible: being fully known without being rejected. Whether you choose to share your story or not, I want you to hear this clearly. Shame loses power when truth enters the light of safety. God is able to bring peace, wisdom, and healing into families, even after decades of silence. In Joel 2:25, God says, I will restore to you the years the locust hath eaten. And many women grieve those years deeply. The years spent surviving instead of living. The years spent believing silence was strength. Now the years of anxiety, fear, hypervigilance, people pleasing, and emotional exhaustion should be gone. Some women grieve lost relationships. Others grieve the joy the trauma stole from motherhood, marriage, or simply being able to rest well. But God sees every one of those tears. He is still able to bring beauty, peace, wisdom, and healing into the years. we have left. Your 60s, 70s, and 80s are not the end of your story. You are still allowed to heal, speak, grieve, set boundaries, and live in peace. Today we talked about the difficult question of whether to tell our adult children about the abuse we had. We talked about why this feeling could be frightening to you and why you should never be pressured, and how silence can protect pain, and how God still offers healing and wisdom in every season of your life. Most importantly, you're not weak because this is hard. You're a woman who survived, and with God's help, you are still becoming a woman who can live in peace. Now that we've talked about whether to share this story with your adult children, you may be wondering why these memories are becoming so intense later in life. In the next video, to help you understand the trauma often resurfaces after 60 and why you're going backwards in your healing, just click on the next video on the screen. And let's walk through it together. Remember, because he lives, it does change everything.